Some people have asked me why I am seeking the Republican nomination and going through the petition process as opposed to the assembly process. I don't know how many people today read the Denver Post. I hope not many. Not many people do, but there was an interesting article in that Post today. It was written by the former state party chairman, Dick Wadhams. And he was explaining what the Republican Party needed to do and who the Republican Party needed to nominate if they wanted to be successful. And guess who he thought was the #1 problem for the Republican Party in terms of nominating? Yeah, I have that distinction. Ever be nominated. Why Republicans can't handle it because I am so controversial. Because indeed, he called me a one-issue candidate in the last general election, in the governor's election. Well, that was certainly untrue. We fought on a lot of issues, immigration being one. Indeed, I did run for something. I ran for the Republican Party nomination for president in 2007 on one issue. It's absolutely true. People used to say to me all the time, "You're just a one-issue candidate. You're running for president. You want the Republican nomination." I go, "Yes, that is true. I am a one-issue candidate here, but at least I have an issue." You know? I mean, what do these other guys got? I mean, they just simply want to be president. That's it. That's all there is to it, and that's all there is to it time and time and time again. People simply want the job. You name it, you fill in the blank. I don't care what it is, whether it's county commissioner or state senate or U.S. Senate or president of the United States. They want the job. And if you say to yourself, "I'll do anything to get the job," that's the goal. That is the end result, the job. Then, of course, what is it you do next? You have to say then, well, what is it that I have to say and do and be in order to get that job? Because the job is the goal. Well, yeah, I have run for a couple of things, governor, president of the United States, and be candid with you, never for a millisecond, at least running for the presidency, did I ever think I was going to be president. And it wasn't why I was running. It had nothing to do with it. I was well aware of the fact that I was never going to get the nomination, nor would I be the president. But I did have issues, you bet, and I wanted them discussed. And I went on those stages time and time again, and yeah, I came in 3rd out of 9 in the Iowa straw poll. And it got me, the good thing about that is it got me into the debates. You have to show that you've got nationwide support, or else you don't get on a stage during the presidential debates. And I got on 9, and it was great. It was terrific. Had a lot of, and I forced eventually, I mean, it took me from February to December of 2007 to do it, to get every single one of those people to address the issue of illegal immigration. Now, they didn't want to. God knows they did not want to. And so I had to, and I remember the very first debate, man, I was scared to death. It was at the it was at the Reagan Library, and honest to God, I'm not kidding you, I was shaking in my boot, literally, because this was just the big time, and who am I, this congressman from Colorado? I mean, you know, and I'm thinking, oh boy, this is going to be scary. But we had practiced for weeks and weeks and weeks to try to answer every single question, no matter what it was, by turning it into an illegal immigration response. and it wasn't that hard, because that's the only reason I was there. I had no other purpose. And it's not really hard, because if you say, you know, well, what about health care? Oh, I can tell you about an illegal immigration problem we've got with health care, you bet. How about education? Oh yeah, I can handle, you know, and so we went through this whole range of things, and it was great. I had an opportunity. So every question, I mean, I started at the beginning, you know, I'm on one end, Paul is on the other, and I keep wanting to say Rand, but his dad is on the other end, and we were there eventually like potted plants. waiting, going to have a question, aren't I? And every question that would come up for any of the other guys, I'm thinking, I know how I know exactly what illegal immigration, I know how I handle it, right? So finally, it's MSNBC, Chris Matthews. Yeah. The tingle was going up and down his leg, that's right. And he says, we have a question here for Tom Tancredo. I said, oh, wow. Okay, illegal immigration. And he says, I'm thinking, you know, I know I got handsome. And he says, it's from an audience member. He says, and this is my first question, running for president, for the Republican nomination for president. He says, and if you're elected president, Mr. Tancredo, this person wants to know, what would you do to increase organ donors? Illegal immigration. I did not go there. I did not go there. But I said something brilliant. I said, what? What's the question? It was my first response in the presidential primary. What? Oh, it was very scary. Anyway, we worked our way through it, and by the end, every single person, I'm in a little motel room in nowhere, Iowa, and I mean, let me tell you what the motel room was like. It had a sign on the window, on the mirror. You know, the bathroom was really, there was the toilet on this side, but the sink over here in the hallway. That type of little thing, you know? You've seen those? Maybe not. But anyway, they're very inexpensive. And it's about midnight, and I'm eating a hamburger, and it's snowing like crazy, it's cold. There's a thing on the mirror that said, please don't use our towels to wash your car. That's the kind of motel it was. So I had to put the towels back. so anyway, I'm watching, and the last thing is a commercial for Rudy Giuliani. Now Rudy actually was I liked him a lot. He was a pleasant, kind of collegial fellow, as opposed to a guy by the name of McCain. Not a friend, and we did not get along at all. But Giuliani, I just disagreed with him on a number of things, including this issue. He was, after all, the mayor of the sanctuary city of the United States, right? But there he was, and he's going, and if you'll give me your vote in Iowa, I promise you, I will secure the borders, I will stop this illegal immigration. So I pick up the phone, and I call Babe Buchanan, who was my campaign manager at the time, Pat Buchanan's sister. She had run his campaigns. And I said, Babe, we can pull the plug on this thing. The last domino has just fallen. And it was. He was the last one. Now, McCain, the only thing he ever said was, I got the message, when I kept pressing him. I got the message. God only knows what message that was. But it wasn't the one I was trying to send anyway. But now I tell you all this. I'm running for governor, you're right. But I am not the party candidate. That is true. And I have fought this party ever since I can remember. I ran for, in 1976, I ran for the state legislature. Here's a couple of people here, Arvin and Bingham Michael, who know that trick well, and they handed out a lot of stuff for me, God bless them, in all those races. And they know the party has never supported me. And I've always been too controversial, too much involved with issues. And by the way, I don't ask them how to vote when I'm there. You know, I don't care what they think. And if you read this thing today in the Post, then you'll understand why I am going by petition. I am not going to trust my future in this race to Ryan Call or anybody in the Republican Party hierarchy. He doesn't like it, doesn't like me, that's tough. And maybe I win and maybe I don't, but I'll tell you what. If I do, you guys, it will be because I have a commitment. And that commitment and that duty is not to the party. It never has been. And I used to say, every time I took an oath on the floor of the House, U.S. House of Representatives, it was, it's the same thing time and time again. And I always think to myself, I wonder if anybody else listens to these words, because if you listen, you realize what you're saying there. You're taking an oath, but it is not to the President of the United States, and it is not to a party. It is to the Constitution of the United States. That's where your loyalty should be. That's where your commitment should be. And I guarantee you, to the best of my ability, and as God is my judge, and by the way, He is, I will do my best. I will do my best to represent all of our interests, but I cannot tell you I represent everybody's interests. And certainly there will be controversy if I am the governor of this state. There's no two ways about that, I'm sure. Because one thing I tell you I will do, if we had another shutdown, another government shutdown, and if the federal government tried to close a park in this state, and if I still had any control over the National Guard, they could not do it. They will not do it. I will start a 10th Amendment caucus. The first thing I'm going to do is see if there are any other governors out there who have the guts to join me in it. And maybe there's somebody who's a better leader of it. Somebody's been around a while. Scott Walker, somebody who will join in a 10th Amendment governor's caucus. So many that it would take. That's why I always push for a bill of impeachment, because you have to list them or else you get lost. You can't remember how far back this goes. He is the greatest threat, and here's the guy who could be Obama's greatest threat. There you go.
Thanks very much, Tom, and thanks, Randy, for having me here. And look, it's great to see so many familiar faces. I think I know more people in Colorado than I know in Christchurch. Seriously, I really do. And it's really good. Who's heard me speak before? I think a lot of the audience have, haven't they? And you came back again. You. Okay. Well, thanks very much for having me here. Those who don't know me, I've been blogging for many years. I've been, Glenn Beck used a lot of my information. As I say, I was the guy who exposed Van Jones. And Frank Marshall Davis, the communist who mentored your president during his formative years. I've done about 5 tours of the country now promoting my books. I get 90-day visas. Tom will appreciate this. I get 90-day visas, but I'm very tempted to stay for 91 because apparently I get a free cell phone. Great country, a great country. And so I've spoken to more than 200 Tea Party groups, so I claim to know the Tea Party as well as anybody around this country. And I'll tell you what, you are the best of America. You really are. So, right, the reason everybody always asks me why I even come here. Why do I come to America? I'd say there are 2 basic reasons. The first is straight out gratitude. My country was only saved in World War II because of the huge sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. And that memory is very strong in my country now. The second reason is related, but it's a little bit more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If freedom fails in the United States, if you lose your constitution and your liberty and your economy and your military superiority, which is going by the day, the bad guys of this planet, I'm talking Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, North Korea, and their Islamic allies, they will carve up this planet amongst themselves. I get emails all the time from Americans saying, look, if things turn bad here, can I come and live in New Zealand? I could start a consultancy, I really could. And I say, look, come down, you'll love the place, it's a beautiful country. But it's not a refuge. Nowhere is. Just 1,500 miles to the north of New Zealand are the beautiful Fijian Islands, another wonderful tourist destination. But the Chinese are now training the Fijian military. They're building big hydroelectric dams on the islands. Fiji is now a Chinese client state. Tonga is well on the way, as are the Cook Islands, and a whole bunch of microstates right through the South Pacific. Last year, the Australian Minister of Defence was up in China for talks, and a top Chinese general publicly embarrassed him. He said, Australia needs a godfather. The question is this, is it going to be an American godfather or a Chinese godfather? If you are smart, you will choose China, because we are the growing power in the region. Now, he wouldn't have been arrogant enough to say that under Bush, even under Clinton, certainly not under Reagan, but he's arrogant enough to say it now because of the leadership he sees coming out of your White House. And all around this planet, folks, your allies, from Israel to Germany to Britain to Canada to South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Australia, they're all freaking out. They're so worried, people, because they see that your president loves the bad guys more than he loves them. And that's causing a huge amount of instability. You know, Japan was never supposed to rearm after World War II, and now they are rearming, which doesn't excite us much in Australia and New Zealand, I can tell you. But we don't really blame them, because we know that they cannot trust Obama to protect them from North Korea and China. You know, Israel now has its back to the wall, has no friends left in the Middle East because of the meddling of your president, and they may be forced to take desperate measures to defend themselves, and those measures could put us into World War III. You know, you've got a president who cries peace all the time. He's got a Nobel Peace Prize in his trophy cabinet, yet he's leading us into war. And if you get in a war with your enemies, folks, Russia, China, and Iran, etc., you're going to need allies. But all of your allies around the world are looking at you and wondering if it's worth being an ally anymore. They saw what your president did to Poland and Czechoslovakia, took away their missile shield, abandoned them to the Russians. They saw him abandon Georgia to the Russians. They're seeing him on the verge of banning the Ukraine to the Russians right now, doing nothing to help the Venezuelans who are trying to throw off the Cubans right now. They saw him abandon the Iranian revolutionaries a few years ago who tried to get rid of the mullahs in that country. Obama did nothing. But when the communists and the Muslim Brotherhood riot in Egypt and Tunisia, he's right in there, folks. He's right in there. Can't wait to get involved. So all these countries are worrying people. They're worrying that America cannot be relied on. And your enemies are getting stronger and stronger, and your military is getting weaker and weaker. Where's that going to head to, folks? Now, so that's why every New Zealander, every Australian, every Canadian, every Japanese has a very strong vested interest in America restoring its constitution, restoring its economy, and keeping that military strong, folks. Because that's the only thing that is keeping any form of stability on this planet right now. Right now. Now my first book, some of you might have seen it, was Barack Obama and the Enemies Within. That's all about Obama and his pro-Soviet ties, his ties to Marx, to pro-Soviet communists like Frank Marshall Davis and Quentin Young and Alice Palmer, Democratic Socialists of America, and other Marxist groups. And that's nearly 700 pages, folks. And I got bloody sick of lugging that around the country, I can tell you. It's heavy. And I vowed and declared that my next book would be smaller and lighter. And this one is The Enemies Within, Communists, Socialists and Progressives in the US Congress. And guess what? It's bigger. Because those bloody commies just kept on coming. The deeper I dug, the more I found. 5 years of research in libraries and communist libraries all over this country, going through hours and hours and hours of old communist periodicals and that sort of thing, digging out photos and articles and, you know, letterheads and whatever. The evidence is all there, folks. You know, the book profiles 51 members of the House and 14 senators with identifiable ties to the Communist Party USA, Democratic Socialists of America, and other Marxist anti-American groups. And that ain't all of them, folks. The book would have been that thick had I done that. But the book is really about the two big secrets of modern communism. The first secret, I think they borrowed from the devil, because we all know that the cleverest thing the devil ever did was to convince people he doesn't exist. What have the communists done in the last 20 years, folks? They don't exist, right? Or if they do, they're no longer a threat, are they? Now, the second big secret of modern communism directly contradicts the first. Because the big secret of modern communism, which is virtually never written about in all of thousands of books on the subject, is the ability of a tiny Marxist-Leninist party, maybe only a few hundred comrades strong, to influence and even control the legislative process in their country. In other words, to write the laws. So what I'm saying, folks, less than 20,000 card-carrying communists in this country are writing the laws, sponsoring the laws that control the lives of more than 300 million Americans. And that's a pretty far-fetched statement, isn't it? It's a very small tail wagging a very big dog, isn't it? Because when these people stand for public office under their own name, which they do occasionally for sport, they get sort of 37 votes or 162 votes or something. And people just laugh at them. How could they possibly be any threat to us? But is it just the number of votes you can muster? Is that the only way to measure your political influence? How many votes does the mob ever get in Vegas? How many votes did Al Capone ever get in Chicago? How many votes does the mafia get in Sicily? Bribery, corruption, intimidation, thuggery, vote fraud, indoctrination. There's a whole bunch of ways, people, that small organised minorities can control much larger groups from behind the scenes. And that's what Leninism is, folks. The science of Leninism. Forget the Marxism stuff, that doesn't work too well, but Leninism has been exceedingly successful. Because that's the science of small groups taking control of larger groups and holding that power. Less than 2,000 Bolsheviks, people, took over Russia in 1917, a country at the time of 140 million people. And they've had 100 years to practice their arts, practice their science, and they are very, very good at it. Very good. Now, the mechanism they use, in this country particularly, is control of the labour unions. Now, you were very lucky in America for a long time because your AFL-CIO was controlled by hardcore anti-communists like Lane Kirkland and George Meany. But in 1995, there was a coup, a very significant political event, and I bet you've never even heard about it. Very significant, because that was the year that Democratic Socialists of America, 7,000 members, your largest Marxist group, that was the year they took over the AFL-CIO. They got rid of Lane Kirkland and they put their man, John Sweeney, in as president. And now their protege, Richard Trumka, runs it for them. The first thing that Sweeney did was to abolish the anti-communist clause from the AFL-CIO's constitution, and the Marxists came flooding back. Now they control every major labour union in your country, NEA, SEIU, AFSCME, United Auto Workers, Labourers, the whole lot, and the AFL-CIO itself. lock, stock and barrel. Now think about it, people. What elected Democrat in this country does not owe his job to the labour unions? Any? They need the unions, folks. It might only be 11% of your workforce, but it's the unions that get the Democrats elected. They use the unions for money, for manpower. Richard Trump has just talked about spending $300 million on state house races this cycle. They need their money, they need their manpower for get out the vote and even for vote fraud. There's hardly a Democrat at any level who does not owe his job to the labour unions. So if the labour unions can get you elected and get you de-elected, and they tell you to do a certain thing, what do, folks? You do it, you jump. So the process is quite simple. The communists set a policy. It might be socialisation of student loans, or green jobs, or normalisation of relations with Cuba, or whatever it is. They set a policy, they make it labour union policy, and the unions make it Democratic Party policy. There's not a policy at state or federal level in this country from the Democrats that cannot be traced back to the Communist Party USA or Democratic Socialists of America or both. That's how a very small tail, folks, wags a very big dog, and you are that very big dog. Now, it's all very academic though, you know, like this is just me spouting off. But how about some real examples of this in practice? Now, if you've been following the news lately, you might have heard of this one. This is one of their big examples. It's called Obamacare. Anyone heard of it? Good, you're keeping up. Good to see. Okay. Now look, I know that Obamacare is not yet fully socialised or single-payer healthcare. We all know where it's heading. Harry Reid's admitted that. Jan Schakowsky's admitted it. This is going to single-payer, government-run healthcare. That's the plan. And I just want to say a few things about single-payer because I come from a country that's had it my entire life. I've known nothing else. And I'll tell you what, folks, it sucks. It sucks big time. Everything you've ever heard about it is true, and worse. But I still get people, liberals, even some so-called Republicans will say, oh, but you know, pre-existing conditions and the uninsured, and you know, it's fairer, it's not really socialism, it's what they do in Europe, it'll be okay. The big word all these people forget is quality. They assume the quality is going to stay the same. But when it comes to the healthcare of you or your children, is there any more important word than quality? Do you want a quality doctor or an average doctor looking after your 7-year-old, folks? So if you're in a free market healthcare system, and I know you don't have free market here, but at least you have strong elements of it, you are a customer. And you business folk in the room, how do you treat your customers? Pretty darn good, I hope. Otherwise you won't be able to afford my book. You know, you gotta, you know, you play golf with them, you send them Christmas cards, you make friends with them. That's how American business works. And if you're a doctor, your patient is your customer. And the longer your patient lives, and they're happier and healthier and more productive they are, the more holidays they can afford to give you, right? That's how it works. But what about if you're in a single payer system? Sounds great. The government pays all of your healthcare bills. But the budget is going to be fixed. The budget is X amount. But the needs are infinite. Budget fixed, needs infinite. What do you then become, people? You become a liability. You're a liability on the system. And how do you business folk, how do you treat your liabilities? If you're smart, you eliminate them, right? Business 101, eliminate your liabilities. Not hard to figure out, is it? So, I get people in this country that say, look, under Obamacare, we're going to have death panels. Panels who decide who lives and dies. Get real, folks. You don't need death panels. every head of every department in every Western hospital is their own death panel. You know, you're the head of the oncology department treating cancer patients at Christchurch Public Hospital, where I come from. You've got a budget of, say, $200 million a year for chemotherapy, or $20 million a year for chemotherapy. It's getting towards the end of the year. Your budget is running low. You've got a 75-year-old guy in this bed who's got prostate cancer, and he needs $200,000 worth of chemo to extend his life 2, 3, maybe 5 years. You've got a 7-year-old girl in this bed who's got leukemia. She needs $200,000 worth of treatment to save her life. She might live to 50, 60, 70 years old. She might marry, have children, have a career. Your budget's running out, folks. It's the end of the year. You can only afford to treat one of them. What are you going to do? What would you do? What would any doctor do? The budget is fixed. The needs are infinite. You have to triage. You have to ration. We don't even call it rationing in New Zealand. We just understand that if you're old and not paying taxes and you're a useless eater, you do not get the same level of treatment as someone who's young and productive and paying taxes. You just don't, folks. It's just the way it works. That's how it works in Australia. It's how it works in Britain, Europe, and Canada, which is why they all come down here. But it's going to be different in America, right? Because the laws of economics don't apply here, do they? Anybody who tells you there's going to be no rationing is lying straight to your face, because it cannot work any other way. That's the only way it can work. You know, why did they ration food in Russia when the government controlled the food supply? If the government owned McDonald's, they'd be rationing burgers right now. You know that. It's just the way it works, people. Now, the father of the single-payer healthcare movement of this country is a man called Quentin Young. He's a retired physician from Chicago. He's pushing 90 now. And in my darker moments, I often wish he'd gone to live in Britain 20 years ago. Because he might not be with us now. But he's been trying to wreck your system for more than 50 years. He set up Physicians for a National Health Plan, a whole bunch of other organisations. He's worked with the AMA, worked with Canadian doctors, and worked with congressmen like John Conyers to get single-payer legislation in front of your Congress on several occasions. And it's always been voted down, every time. People were too smart for it. But in 2009, with the Affordable Health Care Act, they finally started to make progress. And it's not surprising the progress came under Mr. Obama, because for many years in Chicago, Quentin Young was Mr. Obama's personal physician. Openly claims credit for indoctrinating Obama into socialised healthcare. Says Obama was a big fan of single payer when he was an Illinois state senator and nobody paid any attention to him. Quentin Young was a 40-year veteran of the Communist Party USA. Any Vietnam veterans in the room? Thank you, I knew there would be some. Thank you. Well, Quentin Young, 1972, him and 3 other communist doctors went to North Vietnam to offer their services to the communist government when they were trying to kill you guys. That's how patriotic Quentin Young is. He then joined, after the Communist Party, he joined Democratic Socialists of America, your largest Marxist group, and they are the people 100% behind Obamacare, with a little help from the Communist Party. It's been their baby for 40 years now. They had people on Hillary's committee on socialised healthcare. It's been their #1 priority for that amount of time. They pushed it through the AFL-CIO that they control. They also promoted it through the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which they also set up and control. It's their vehicle into your Congress. 80 members, the biggest caucus in your House of Representatives, set up by Democratic Socialists of America. Now, they also basically are now boasting in their publications that Obamacare is going to fail. Obamacare is going to fail, folks. This is what Democratic Socialists of America are saying. But that's great, because then we're going to blame the greedy doctors and the greedy insurance companies, and single payer comes next. That's the plan. That is the plan. So, to prove the issue, just before the last election, the Obama campaign put out a little video designed to mock Mitt Romney. They said, "Hey Mitt, guess what? The joke's on you, Mitt. You know how you don't like Obamacare, you want to get rid of it? Well, the man who designed it for us, John McDonough, a former Massachusetts state legislator and a Harvard academic, well, he was the man, Mitt. He was the architect of it." Their words. And guess what? He also designed Romney Care, so ha-ha. And it's true, McDonough did design both systems. Mitt Romney got a bill out of the Massachusetts state legislature which is shot full of Democratic Socialists of America supporters, and he tried to modify it, make it less socialist, and put it back. But basically a compromise was reached, and he got his name stuck to it. What the video did not say is that John McDonough was the Boston chairman of Democratic Socialists of America. So a Marxist designed Obamacare. The same Marxist group promoted it through the Progressive Caucus and the AFL-CIO, and another member of the same group personally indoctrinated your president into it. You think they might have had some influence there, folks? 7,000 members, and they're on the verge of socialising between 1/6 and 1/4 of your economy and wrecking the greatest health system the world has ever known. Where are the Canadians going to come, people? You ain't going to let them do it, are you? You've got to fight this all the way, folks, because this is hardcore socialism. This is a very small tail trying to wag you. Now, another example, and I think Tom will like this one. You'll see it in this state a lot. Comprehensive immigration reform, otherwise known as amnesty. This is huge, folks. And you have members of the Republican Party, leaders of the GOP, like John Boehner and Eric Cantor and John McCain and the guy from Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, Marco Rubio. They're telling you this is going to be good for the Republican Party, right? Because when you give citizenship and voting rights to 12 million, 20 million, 30 million illegal immigrants, they're all going to be so grateful, they're all going to start ticking the R's, right? Yeah? Just like the 90% of the black population in this country have been voting for the D's for 60 years, no matter what the Democrats do to their families and their culture, they're going to change in a hurry, right? The 80% of the Jewish population in this country has been voting Democrat for 100 years. No matter what Obama does to Israel, they still keep ticking those D's, don't they? So why are the illegals going to change in a hurry, folks? Maybe in 20 or 30 years some of them might. A lot of them are very socially conservative. But we've got 2.5 years to save this country, people. 2.5 years maximum. And I'm going to say why, shortly. It ain't going to happen in that time. It isn't. Now, why are these Republicans telling you this arrant garbage? Why are they doing it? Could it be remotely connected to the fact that the US Chamber of Commerce has spent $1.7 billion promoting amnesty over the last 10 years? Could it be connected? What do you think the Chamber wants out of it, people? Cheap labour. Cheap labour to run their factories and farms. Because their profits, people, are far more important than your border integrity or your national security or the laws of your land, right? To them they are. And could it just happen to be that the Republicans who are most avidly promoting this garbage are the ones most closely connected to the Chamber of Commerce and big agribusiness? Or am I being a little over-conspiratorial, do you think? But the real driver of this is the hard left. They are the ones behind this, folks. Started out in California in the 1950s with a Communist Party member called Bert Corona. He was also a Democrat, surprise, surprise. And he was the one who set up the Viva Kennedy clubs in the early 60s, the first organised effort to bring Latinos into the Democratic Party. But he also set up a whole bunch of networks and support groups for illegal immigrants right across the Southwest and Southern California. And the purpose of these groups was to encourage illegals across the border, help get them work in the farms, help farms and factories, help get them settled into their communities, get their kids into schools, get them green cards and eventual citizenship and voting. That was the goal, the voting part. Now, Corona trained, he did his work mainly on government money and union money, but he also trained hundreds of people to carry on the job for him. And 3 of them are very prominent today, all disciples of Corona, all who work very closely together out in California. The first of them is Antonio Villagrosa, a hardcore Marxist, until recently the mayor of Los Angeles. Used to go down to Cuba to cut sugarcane for the Castro brothers. He turned Los Angeles into a sanctuary city. He forbade the LAPD from enforcing immigration laws, and their legals flooded in. Changed the entire demographics of that state. One of his friends, comrades, one of this little group is Gil Cedillo, until recently the head of the California State Senate. Wasn't a Republican, by the way. He's another hardcore Marxist, big-time immigration activist, big-time Obama supporter. He got the DREAM Act pushed through in California a couple of years ago that gave all sorts of so-called rights to the children of undocumented workers. The third member of this little group, another Marxist, Maria Elena Durazzo, currently the head of the California AFL-CIO. She is the one behind the massive union-driven voter registration drives, Latino voter registration drives, and get out the vote efforts that have signed up hundreds of thousands of Latino voters on the California rolls, almost all Democrats. Changed the entire voting patterns of that state, all as a result of a deliberate policy set by the Communist Party USA and Bert Corona and their friends. Totally changed the politics of California. Go to Arizona. 2012, a man died in that state down in Tucson. I'd say one of the most successful politicians to come out of that state in decades. I bet you've never heard of him. It's a man called Lorenzo Torres. He was the head of the Communist Party USA's Latino Commission. And his job was just like Corona's, was to set up immigrants' rights networks across this entire Southwest, from Texas to New Mexico to Colorado, Nevada, Arizona itself, right across the Southwest, folks. He also was charged with organising opposition to any attempt to crack down on illegal immigration. He was the one leading the charge against SB 1070 in Arizona a couple of years ago, a battle, thanks to Tea Party folk like you, that he lost, thankfully. Lorenzo Torres also set up the movements in Tucson and Phoenix that gave Arizona, one of the reddest states in the Union, one of the most libertarian, 3 Communist Party supporters in their congressional delegation. 3 of them. Raul Grijalva, no surprises there, Ed Pastor, and the freshman Kirsten Sinema. All done by Lorenzo Torres. Now we go to the modern era, because this is bubbling away, folks. The man running the immigration rights movement in this country right now is a man called Eliseo Medina. You would have seen him on TV and wearing a purple shirt leading an immigration rally, I'll guarantee it. He was until recently the executive vice president of the SEIU union, the largest union in your country and one with the biggest Latino membership. He's a former member of Obama's Latino Advisory Committee. He's a member of Democratic Socialists of America and a very strong supporter of the Communist Party USA. He works very closely with Raul Grijalva on immigration issues and very closely with Luis Gutierrez, the rep from Illinois, who's driving this in the House. Gutierrez is a former member of the Marxist-Leninist pro-Cuban Puerto Rican Socialist Party. So Medina has been driving this. He's the one who got the bill, went through the Senate, and he's been using his union members across the country to rally outside the offices of Republican congressmen in this state and many others to get them to put an immigration bill through the House. He's driving it, folks. And I want to prove something here. Which organisation in this country 20 years ago was leading the charge against illegal immigration? Not counting Tom, I'm talking organisations. Exactly right, man. It was the unions. The unions were doing it because they saw that illegal immigrants were unfair competition for their members. They would drive wages and conditions down. Very logical. Which organisation in 2014 is leading the charge to legalise illegal immigrants? The AFL-CIO, the unions. So why was it bad for union workers then and good for union workers now? The fact is it isn't, folks. Before 1995, the AFL-CIO was there to represent the interests of its members. After 1995, when Democratic Socialists of America took over, it became there to promote socialist revolution. Illegal immigrants are real bad for unionised workers, folks, but they're bloody great for socialist revolution. The AFL-CIO is quite happy to sell out the wages and conditions and jobs of its own members because the revolution comes first, folks. Betray their own people. Now, it took Aliso Medina 5 years to get that policy changed, folks, because it ain't easy to get union members to vote against their own interests. That Marxist, Mr. Medina, took 5 years of lobbying inside the AFL-CIO to get them to reverse their policy in the year 2000 at their big convention in Louisiana, from anti-illegal immigrant to pro-illegal immigrant. The Marxists did it, folks. But why does he want it? What's the big deal? Well, Medina let the cat out of the bag at a big progressive conference in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago. He got up in front of all the comrades and said, passing an immigration bill is a #1 priority for the progressive movement. We have to get citizenship and voting rights for our 11 million undocumented workers. He said 11 million. We all, nobody knows. They always drive the numbers down. And did he speak about compassion or reuniting families or helping the economy or giving immigrants a break or the American dream? Not our word, people. All he said was this. In 2008, Latinos voted overwhelmingly for Obama and progressive candidates. If we stand by these people, they will stand with our movement. That will give us at least 8 million more Democratic Party votes. That will give us a governing majority, not just for the next few election cycles, but for the foreseeable future. In other words, a Democratic Party, one-party state controlled by the unions and the communists. Because think about it, folks. They get those 8 million votes, Texas goes blue. And if you take, not counting the other states that will go blue, but Texas will go blue, and if you take the Electoral College votes from Texas, your second most populous state, and add them to those of California, which they've already got through immigration, combine that total, people, it makes it mathematically impossible for the Republicans to ever win another presidential election. It's over, folks. Can't be done. And if you think the Democrats are arrogant now, you imagine what they'd be like with 8 million more votes in their pocket and the Republicans permanently out of office. They wouldn't just be sending the IRS after you, people. This country won't be like France or Germany. It'll be like Venezuela very quickly and Cuba not long after, because that is the plan. The immigrants are the meat in the sandwich, folks. It's that cynical. And you have members of the Republican Party telling you this is good for the GOP. They are not only betraying the Republican Party, folks, they are betraying your country. They need to be primaried out and gotten rid of as soon as possible, people, for the survival of your country. Now, the other thing my book is about is the individuals. As I said, I profile 51 members of the House, 14 senators. Now tell me, anybody in this room, not counting military, anybody in this room ever applied for a federal government job who was willing to admit it? Nobody willing to admit it? Sir, okay, brave man. Did you need an FBI security clearance?
Yes.
Now I know that they can be very extensive, depending on the level of your job. You got any comment on that?
I don't want to.
Okay.
Let's just say that honesty is an elastic stick.
Okay. Well, the point is, at least sometimes in the past, they have been very extensive and very thorough. They can go through your underwear drawers, go through your childhood background, drug habits, overseas travel, education, associates. I have a friend who applied for a federal government job. The FBI drove to Canada to interview his communist uncle, and on the strength of that, he was denied the job. Because they need to know about you, folks. You might be in the federal government. You might have the ability to influence public policy someday. You might have state secrets under your control. You might be guarding the President of the United States. So they need to be able to trust you. But what if you're a young radical like Raul Grijalva or John Conyers or Barbara Lee or Maxine Waters or Kirsten Sinema, who hangs around with the Communist Party and has union and communist friends who are able to get them elected to Congress, and they are able to serve on maybe the Homeland Security Committee or the Science and Technology Committee or the Armed Services Committee or even the Intelligence Committee, and have the ability to access all sorts of state secrets and the ability to influence public policy, not just on a national level, but even an international level. How much of an FBI security clearance do you need for that one, people? Zero. Because the people are supposed to vet the candidates, right? And the media is supposed to help you do it, right? How's that one working out for you guys? They did it with Sarah Palin. They did it with Mitt Romney. We knew that Mitt Romney beat up some gay kid when he was 17. We knew all about Sarah Palin's kids' Facebook pages and her husband's membership of the Alaska Independence Party, which was supposed to be some bad group, sort of like a Tea Party type of group. We knew all about that because you had the right to know people, because those people might have been in positions of influence and power. You had the right to know about them. Why don't you have a right to know about Mr. Obama, who's got more skeletons in his closet than an elephant's graveyard? You know? Why is it different? Look, you have people in your Congress right now like John Conyers, who's got a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA. You know, Barbara Lee's about 40 years, Nancy Pelosi's about 40 years with the Marxists. Rosa DeLauro, one of your top Democrats, has an office in the headquarters of the Connecticut Communist Party. Her best friend is Joel Fishman, a member of the Communist Party, delegated by the Communists to liaise with the Democrats. You've got, you know, Eddie Bernice Johnson, long-time history with the Communist Party. You know, Sheila Jackson Lee, very similar. You've got Tammy Baldwin out of the freshman senator from Wisconsin, who's a long-time member of the support group for the Colombian narco-terrorists. She's moved several resolutions in Congress trying to get US military aid cut to the anti-communist government of Colombia so basically her revolutionary friends can take over. You've got Danny Davis and Jan Schakowsky and Jerry Nadler, all card-carrying members of Democratic Socialists of America while serving in your Congress. You've got Raul Grijalva, who used to write for the Communist Party publication. You've got Patty Murray out of Washington State, long-time affiliate of the Washington State Communist Party. You've got Judy Chu out of California. Looks like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, you know. Beautiful haircut, lovely clothes, softly spoken. Head of the Progressive Caucus, head of the Asia Pacific Caucus in your Congress. Big-time immigration activist, by the way. Was on Obama's re-election committee. She goes to China all the time, folks, to build business ties between America and China. Right? When she's in China, she says, "I am coming home." The Chinese press describes her as China's representative in your Congress. Go back to Greensboro, North Carolina, 1979. The Communist Workers' Party, a hardcore radical Maoist outfit, pro-Chinese, got in a street gun battle with the Ku Klux Klan. 5 people died in the streets of Greensboro, North Carolina in broad daylight. Pretty extreme, don't you think? Judy Chu used to head one of their major fronts, Communist Workers' Party. She's still working with at least 5 former members of the Communist Workers' Party, including Jose Calderon, who used to work here in Denver. Working with 5 of them right now. That's Judy Chu. You've got several members of the Congressional Black Caucus, which is basically an arm of Cuban foreign policy, who go down to Cuba on a regular basis to confer with the Castro brothers about how they're going to influence policy in the US Congress to loosen trade and travel restrictions on Cuba. So basically they can send more spies and terrorists to your country. What do you call it, folks, when someone goes from your country to an enemy foreign country to work with them against you?
Treason.
What's that called?
Treason.
Is that a serious offence, folks?
Yeah.
It's happening on a regular basis right now in your Congress, and nobody says boo. Nobody says a damn thing. I quote Raul Castro in my book boasting about this. You know, he thinks it's fine. You have got at least 100 members of your House of Representatives and 20 members of your Senate who couldn't get a basic security clearance to clean the toilets at any military base in your country. And neither could your president. Could that be an issue? I think it could be a bit of a problem, people. You know, these people swear an oath to your constitution, and they are working day and night to subvert it, often in alliance with foreign enemies of your country. Because you think about it, people, if you were a foreign intelligence officer, a Cuban, a Nicaraguan, a Chinese, an Iranian, and you had union and communist friends in this country who could put their sympathisers into your House of Representatives and your Senate almost at will to get any information they wanted until public policy and desired directions, do you think they'd be doing their job if they didn't take advantage of that huge hole in your national security? Do you think they're so dumb they've never taken advantage of this opportunity? You know, these foreign intelligence officers, folks, if they don't do their job, they don't just lose their pensions. When you're working for North Korean intelligence, folks, you screw up. It ain't a good time. And they have all this laid out right in front of them. The heart of your government is wide open for penetration, and nobody does anything about it. Nothing. Do you think the Russians would tolerate 100 pro-Americans in their Duma? Or the Cubans would tolerate 100 pro-Americans in their parliament? You think they'll be that silly? But I don't want to depress you folks with any of that. Am I a little bit late? Don't leave now. Don't leave now, sir. I hate to be responsible for what you might do. Look, this is how I see it, people. If I thought there was no hope for America, I'd be back in my beautiful New Zealand right now, building bunkers and stocking up on baked beans. I'm not mocking prepping, believe me. This is how I see it. In 2008, the left thought they had a slam dunk. They had the House, they had the Senate, they had their man in the White House, and their agenda was all written out, people. 40 years of infiltration, 40 years of burrowing through the unions and the media and the academia and the Democratic Party was all coming together. Their ducks were finally in a row, and they were going to take down the great Satan once and for all, folks. And who was going to stop them? John Boehner? They had it in the bag, folks, but in 2009, 2010, something miraculous happened. And I do not use that word lightly. What do you think it was, people? Should be hard to figure out. You guys came out of nowhere. Where were you? You know, you came out of left field, or should I say right field. You just snuck up on them, folks. They didn't see you coming. I didn't see you coming. They certainly didn't. And you got up there and you blogged and you marched and you emailed and you agitated and you phone banked and you rallied and you put some spine into that GOP. Put some spine into it, and you, not them, took back that house in 2010. You did it, people. Do you know what that did? That brought the agenda of the left to a grinding, screeching halt. They had it in the bag, folks. They had it. It was all rocking and rolling, and you snuck up on them and took their toys away. And some of you wonder why they hate you. Why they call you dirty names. You're genuinely surprised by this. They had it, folks. It was all set and all primed, and you snuck up on them and took it off them. Folks, you saved your country. Do you understand that? You might not see it, people, but I can see it from outside, as can millions of others around this planet. Because if you had not done that in 2010, the entire agenda of the left would be in there now. Those 8 million illegals would be voting in 2014. Obamacare would be locked in. Cap and trade, card check, green jobs. The whole lot would be in now. And where would you be then, folks? How would you fight back against that? Anybody going to argue with that statement that you saved your country? Think about it, people. A bunch of political novices and amateurs came out of nowhere when your country needed you, and you saved your country. If anything deserves a pat on the back, that does, folks. It really does. And you did something else, people. You and Glenn Beck and people like that, you kick-started the Second American Revolution. I've been to all over this country, people. 38 of the 57 states. All over. I haven't found some of them yet, but I'm sure they're there. I've been to the bluest of the blue states. I've had audiences of 500-600 people up in Michigan and Massachusetts and Illinois. Out of the big cities, people, there are millions and millions of people now who understand the Constitution, who love the Constitution, who read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They understand the separation of powers and states' rights and all the things that make your country exceptional. More than there have been since that first American Revolution. It's a huge movement, folks, and it's growing day by day, all as a result of your work. It's an army, people. It's a real army. And you've pushed back Common Core and Agenda 21. You've taken over school boards and county commissions. You've moved into those precinct positions in that GOP and put some spine into that GOP. You've done that with so many state legislatures around this country, people. You've enabled a whole bunch of state legislatures to give the finger to the federal government. Isn't that pretty cool? Isn't that pretty cool? Michigan is a right-to-work state because of people like you. Look, sometimes I think you guys are like baby Superman. You really don't understand your own strength. But your enemies do. They're terrified of you. You know that immigration bill would have gone through the House last term had it not been for the fear you guys put into the GOP over what you did to Marco Rubio and are about to do to Lindsey Graham. They're scared of you folks. They really are. That's why they're pushing back so hard now. Look, last year I went to a big progressive conference in Washington, DC. It was the 50th anniversary bash of the Institute for Policy Studies. Hardcore progressives, folks. They used to work with the KGB, now they work with the Cubans. They're the ideas factory of the Obama administration. So I paid the 75 bucks and I put on my little badge and I mingled with the Marxists. Because I wanted to know what they were thinking, what their plans were, what their agenda was. So I'd sit there listening to all these forums and I got bored, folks. I got real bored real quick. Did you know what they talked about all bloody day? Tea Party this, Tea Party that. The Tea Party took the state legislature's office. They took us there. They surprised us. We can't let them do it again. Tea Party, Tea Party, Tea Party, all day long. They were going on about this all day long. Seriously, it was boring. Because they were obsessed by you guys. They understood that you were the only thing standing between them and what they wanted. They understood that. You need to understand that. You need to understand just how powerful you are and how much truth you have on your side. I'm going to do something now that's normally considered bad manners. Very bad manners, right? But I'm a Kiwi and I can go home. Because it's not kosher, right, to come to someone else's country and tell them how to do things, is it? Especially politics. It's like telling your neighbour how to do their decor, isn't it? But look, I get asked this all the time, what do we do next? Because I see a movement that's 5 years in. You've had a lot of victories, you've had a lot of betrayals, you've had a lot of losses, a lot of burnt out, tired people. Where do we go next? Are we making a difference? Is it worthwhile persevering? Have I got better things to do with my life? Questions I'm sure a lot of you ask a lot of the time. Because what you're doing is real hard work, folks. It's hard and thankless work. Now I see it this way. I see you've got 100 years of progressivism to repeal. Might take 20, 30, 40 years, who knows? But you've got two huge battles coming up, folks. You've got 2014 and 2016. Huge battles. I hear people say, look, I want to go and form a third party. I hate the GOP. Hate the GOP. I can understand that. You know, John Boehner's on my dartboard, believe me. You know. Form a third party, folks. We've got 2.5 years to save this country. You can't do it in that time. It's going to take 20 years to build up something that's viable. Do that, you fly the flag, you feel real great about yourself, but your country, your children will live in slavery because of it. The only force that can stop the Democrats in the immediate short term is the Republican Party. But the real question is this: what will the character of that GOP be? Because if the old guard win out, they will give you a Jeb Bush or some kind of Chris Christie figure, and you're going to lose, folks. And even if you fluke a win, you still lose. Because progressivism just rolls on. But if you had a real leader, an inspiring leader, someone maybe like Ted Cruz, things could be real different, people. Now I want to go back in history a little bit, back to California, 1976. You've been losing your freedoms, Republican, Democrat, for years and years. And people were getting pretty sick of that, but they didn't see a way out. But that year, a man came out of California with a very different vision. And he didn't talk about gross national product figures. He talked about a shining city on the hill, and peace through strength, and the Constitution, and liberty, and getting the government off your back, and standing up against your enemies. Ronald Reagan came out to get that nomination, folks, and hundreds of thousands of people, just like you, loved his message and rallied to the cause. And they pushed and pushed and pushed to get him that GOP nomination in 1976. And what did that old guard do, folks? What did those Rockefeller Republicans do, people? They hated him. They sabotaged him. They slandered him. They banned him from speaking in Ohio, folks. They hated his guts. They fought every step of the way to stop him getting that nomination. And he just lost it. Gerald Ford got it. Gerald Ford went up against Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter won the election. How did those Carter years work out for you guys? Lots of fun, were they? Interest rates up to here, gas queues round the corner, Iran, Panama. You're still suffering from it now. Easily your second worst ever president. But the really important thing is this. The grassroots, the people just like you, did not give up. They got into those GOP precinct positions that make all the difference. They pushed again. They got more organised and more disciplined and more purposeful. And this time they got behind Reagan in 1980 and they pushed him for that nomination, and they were not going to take no for an answer this time, folks. And they forced that GOP kicking and screaming to give them their candidate. And Reagan got that nomination, went on to sweep the election in a landslide, 49 states, people. Carried 49 states, and look what he did. He got your taxes down. He got your military strong. He took out the Soviets. He got the hostages back. He built the economy, got the government off your backs, and restored the pride in your country. Anybody going to tell me he wasn't the best president of the 20th century? And had people like you listened to the Republican old guard, the Reagan Revolution never would have happened, folks. You got rhino after rhino, and you got sick of it, and you said, we're having our guy this time, and guess what? Guess what happened, people? The people made the right decision, did they not? I'll just digress a little bit, because we were talking about young people before. And we've got to get the young people involved, right? And we do. And I've had rhinos and that say to me, look, to do that we need young, cool candidates, nice haircuts, good speaker, slick suits, few liberal values, sort of like Marco Rubio, because that's what the young people like, you know. I say, lighten up, you know, listen, you know. What about, say, someone like, say, Ron Paul out of Texas? You know, where's his fan base, folks? The colleges are full of Ron Paul people. They love him like a chocolate. And he's slick and cool and charismatic, right? He's a grumpy old bugger. But he's a principled grumpy old bugger. You know, I have disagreements with his foreign policy and defence policies, but I've got to give him credit. In most areas, he stands up. He's consistent, he's principled, and he never backs down, folks. He has been consistent his entire political career. And guess what? The young people love him. Guess what? You know, what was Ronald Reagan like? He was principled, he was consistent, and he stood up. And the young people loved him, folks. They rallied in their hundreds of thousands for him. I know people in this room who supported him as young guys, like Bill over there. You know? Look, I go around this country, I wear my Reagan badge at airports quite often. I've had 16-year-old girls with wacky-looking goth haircuts come up to me and say, wasn't he great? How do you think I'd get on with a Gerald Ford badge? So what's the message there, folks? Look, right now, this country is Carter on steroids. And we need Reagan on steroids to turn it around. And not just to do what Reagan did, to go way beyond Reagan, to actually restore your constitution and gut your federal government. We need that, folks. But how are we going to do it? Because to win that next election, you're going to need every element of that old Reagan base. Because you've got vote fraud, you've got the media against you, the unions against you, all sorts of dirty tricks to contend with. and demographics are going the wrong way. So how are you going to win it? Because you need those Reagan Democrats. You need the social conservatives, the fiscal conservatives, the defence conservatives, the energy voters. You need the Libertarians, voted 1% for Gary Johnson last time. You need also the 2 million Republicans who stayed home last time. And I'll tell you who else you need. You need the 4 to 6 million evangelical Christians who don't vote.
That's right.
You need every single element of your base to have a chance of winning, folks. But how are you going to get there? Because a lot of these groups don't like each other very much, do they? No. They have very divergent views on a lot of issues. And they can fight like cats and dogs at times. But the one thing they all have in common is they all want something. Some people want to get into the Federal Reserve. Some people want a better defence policy. Some people want education reform or immigration or whatever, or gun rights. Everybody's got a pet issue. Is that right? Everybody's got something that excites them more than other things. We all know what Tom's is, don't we? Okay? He wants a lot of other things as well. I'm being a bit unfair to him. But the thing is, they all want something. So this is what I would do if I was a man like Ted Cruz. Doesn't have to be Ted Cruz, but I think the principle applies. I'd be wanting to get that Reagan coalition together now, right now, before Jeb Bush or anyone else gets his head of steam up. And I'd go to all of these groups and say, right, you'll want something, I'm going to give you something in return for your support. The first thing you're going to get is Alan West is going to be on my VP ticket. You Libertarians vote for me in this election, Rand Paul will be Secretary of the Treasury and he can do what he damn well wants to the Federal Reserve. Sarah Palin, Secretary of Energy. Drill, baby, drill. $1 a gallon gas for every American family. Mike Lee, Secretary of the Interior. Open those federal lands up to the people, folks. Herman Cain, Secretary of Commerce. Regulate, deregulate, deregulate. Scott Walker, Secretary of Labour. Right to work all over, people. John Bolton, Secretary of State. Tell the enemies where to go, build ties with our friends. Ambassador to the United Nations. No one. Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary of Health and Human Services. Attorney General, Mark Levin. And for the Christians who do not care about politics, but do care about the education of their children, I'd say vote for me this time, people. David Barton will be Secretary of Education and Common Core will be gone and education will devolve back to the states, the counties, the school boards and the country. Go across the whole list, folks. Would you get enthused with a team like that? Yeah. Would you get out of bed every day to campaign and phone bank to get those people elected? And would it unify the base? Because everybody's getting something. You might not like Herman Cain, but you love Sarah Palin. You might not like John Bolton, but you love Rand Paul. You know what you're getting. You know that if you work, you're going to get somebody in office who's going to do what you want for a change. That's incentive, people. Isn't that the American way?
Yes.
Aren't we sick of not getting what we want out of politics? Think about it, folks. What would the media do with that? Because right now they can take out a Mitt Romney or a Sarah Palin But you try taking on 15 Rottweilers who back each other up and don't take any crap from anybody. How would the left cope with it? What would they do, people? And if somebody screwed up, Ted Cruz just says, you're out, somebody else goes in, strong executive decision, make a negative into a positive, and the campaign rolls on. Because right now, you put all your eggs in one basket, folks. Mitt Romney was a good candidate, but he got Bain Capital hung around his neck pretty quickly, and that destroyed his image with enough voters to destroy all your efforts. All your eggs in one basket. See, you didn't have a founding father in this country, folks. You didn't just have George Washington. You had George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry and Benjamin Franklin. You had a team then. You need a team now. You think about it, folks, you've never had a bigger base than you have now of true constitutionalists, libertarians, freedom lovers. There's never been more in this country than right today. You've got a whole bunch of leaders out there who know exactly what it takes to turn this country around and are itching and champing at the bit to do it. You get the leaders, you get the base with the leaders, folks, and you unify. Who's going to stand in your way? Who's going to stand in your way, people? So what I'm saying is, folks, you've got a way to get out of this, to restore your country. And I'm asking for 2.5 more years of hard work out of you people. You've done 5. It's been hard work. It's been thankless. But you work for 2.5 more years and give it everything you've got. The very least I can promise you is the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I could. What's that worth to you, folks? And if you win, and you can win, you will not only give your children the country you inherited, but one even greater. And what's that worth to you? Everything, folks. Look, it ain't easy. Victory is not assured. I was in Morristown, New Jersey last year. I went to the encampment where 10,000 of your colonial troops, American troops, camped in the winter of 1780. Made this one look like Tahiti, people. 10,000 troops started the winter. Death, desertion and disease took 4,000 of them. The troops were raiding the local farms and boiling up their own boots to eat the leather. The officers were eating their pet dogs. But they persevered through that winter. They persevered through Valley Forge and all the harsh winters for many years. They got chased across virtually every state. They had lost far more battles than they ever won. A bunch of farmers and lawyers and shopkeepers and blacksmiths and fishermen took on the greatest military empire the world had ever seen. How insane was that, people? Would you have bet on George Washington? But look, they had leadership, folks, and they had stoicism. And George Washington understood just how miraculous his victory was. Do you think the age of miracles is over, people? No. Do you think if you stand up and fight for that shining city on the hill, you will not get the same help that George Washington and his troops got? Still there, people, you know that. Those people persevered through so much hardship, motivated by little more than an ideal, and they took out those British at Yorktown in a surprise attack, and look at the country they created for you. Look at what they gave you, folks. Amazing. You know, they were on the verge of defeat many, many, many times. But they hung on and they took the British out at Yorktown. One victory, and that was all it took. But it was a big one. Now, do you think your patriots, you know, you've got to remember too, folks, less than 10% of the population supported the revolution, 3% fought in it, 40% supported the British, and the rest didn't give a damn. Is that familiar to you guys? Nothing's changed. The only thing's changed is the more things change, the more they stay the same. So do you think those patriots starving and freezing in the snow of Valley Forge and Morristown had any comprehension of the amazing country they were creating? Do you think they had any vision of what you see around you now? Do you think when they were dodging British bullets and eating berries to survive, do you think they saw their place in history? Do you think they thought in those terms? We can see their place in history because we have 200 years of perspective. We can see what they did back then and what it led to. But what about some perspective for you guys? How about you look forward 200 years? 200 years from now, some young high school kid will get up in front of a class in this town and he'll say, guess what guys, I'm blown away because I found out, you know how we studied that Second American Revolution and everybody thought the country was dumb, but the patriots stood up and restored the Constitution and saved the Republic. Think of what we owe those people, guys. Well, I found out, I did some research into my family background. I found out that my great-great-great-great-great-grandma and granddaddy were in the Arapahoe County Tea Party. So how cool is that? So I just want to say to you folks, thank you so much for what you're doing for America and for liberty, for my country. God bless America and God bless the Tea Party. Thank you.
Couple of things, everybody. We've got some munchies. Mary from Adams County brought in some munchies. We'll lay them out quickly. We're going to pass the hat before you go. Trevor is not paid for his appearances. He does do some book sales, but he's got travel and food and other expenses. So if you've got $1 or a $5 bill and you can throw it in, we'd really appreciate it. Because it ain't free to travel around the United States of America throwing bombs at the Obama administration and the Democrat Party.
Can we ask
Mary, yes.
Can I ask a question?
Well, we're not going to get to questions yet. We're going to get to questions in just a second. We're going to pass some flyers around for the new radio show. We're trying to grow this thing. As you know, KLZ has made a commitment to Tea Party, to the Liberty Movement. Grassroots Radio Colorado broadcasts 5 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. There's a Liberty morning show from 5 to 7 a.m. every Monday through Friday. This has Facebook page, my law office page, all kinds of stuff on it, ways that we can connect, because that is how we grow our movement. And before we have munchies, Trevor's going to sign books or sell books, whatever you guys want while you're here. But also want an opportunity to ask Trevor questions. Does anybody have questions? Mary, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Will you tell us what that is?
Yeah, look, good question, Mary. But just on the national security front, a lot of people, you know, Obama's talking about cutting the military to fight a one or two front war. Now, people think of China out here and Russia over there and radical Islam here and Iran there and Cuba there, whatever. Basically, they're all one. They're all working together. And a lot of them are working together through a thing called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is a military, economic, and political pact. It encompasses Russia and China. Iran is an associate member. All the Kyrgyzstans and Kazakhstans. It's got Sri Lanka involved, India involved, Pakistan involved. It's basically the new Warsaw Pact. And we always used to see the old Warsaw Pact in the old days and be scared of it. Well, this is even bigger and we never hear about it. So, you know, if it came to war, it wouldn't just be fighting Russia or fighting China. It would be fighting Russia on one front, China on another, Iran on another, the communists from Latin America from the south, and radical Islam all over. So it's about a 5 or 6 front war, all coordinated through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So there is a bit of an issue there.
Neil.
Yeah, Trevor, we earlier this week, and you may not be aware of it, a mini coup d'etat that was run out of Washington, which took Ken Buck out of the Senate race and plucked a 60% squish congressman who could campaign better to run for a Senate seat.
In which state?
Here.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Okay.
Corey Gardner.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Corey Gardner was plucked by John Boehner and Rowe and all the other people that throw out Ken Buck because they want to win, but you're winning with a 60% heading south kind of a guy. How do you deal with it with something like that?
Well, look, the fact is, the power in the Republican Party is the precinct committees. You know, there's enough the half of them are vacant around this country. There's enough Tea Parties in this room to take over, in this country, to take over the Republican Party 3 times over. You just have to go and sign up, do it, vote, get on the central committees, and you decide the candidates. It's not rocket science.
It's done out of Washington, though.
Yeah, but, okay, if you had the power in the state, they couldn't have done it. You know, that's simple, because you don't take the power that's there right in front of you, so those rhinos come and do exactly what they'll do. And they do it all the time, and you've got to stop them. And it's maybe late for this particular race, but if every Tea Party in this country took on those Republican Party precinct committees, it would totally change the whole picture. And they don't want you to know about that, folks.
And let's not forget, caucus is Tuesday, so let's show up. Who else has questions for Trevor? Kathy?
Hi, Trevor. Good to see you again. Had an opportunity to go to the leadership program of the Rockies a couple weekends ago, and as much as I love Ted Cruz, my understanding is there's some eligibility issues as he's a Canadian guy. So I'd love to see him in the coalition. What are your thoughts on Trey Gowdy?
Well, I think Trey Gowdy's great, you know. Look, it doesn't have to be Ted Cruz, but Ted Cruz is going to run, and he thinks he's eligible, and Mark Levin thinks he's eligible. So that's a question that does have to be settled, and I fully agree with you. If he's not eligible, he doesn't run. But I think he will run, and I think he will. Personally, I think he's eligible. But Trey Gowdy's great. I think Alan West is great. I think Mike Lee's great. I think there's a lot of potential leaders out there. But the really important thing is this: it's got to be you who picked them, no one else. You got to do what you did with Reagan in 1980. Not let the GOP or the media pick your candidate. You have to make that decision, because you'll make a better decision than they will, I can guarantee you that.
It's almost 4:30. We'll take maybe one more question. This lady right here.
Just a couple of comments about the Ukraine situation.
Can you step up and speak louder?
Could you comment on the Ukraine situation?
Oh, the Ukraine.
Yeah, the Ukraine. Yeah, well, you know, I see it this way. Russia is still run by the KGB. You know, it's a KGB state. And they are trying to rebuild their empire right now. What happened in the 1980s? Well, in the 1990s, communism didn't really collapse. And this explained in that video there done by a friend of mine who was used to work in the Czech Communist President's office. They were under huge pressure from Reagan. They knew if they didn't do something, they were going to have a genuine collapse on their hands. There'd be blood on the street and they'd all be strung up. So they did a managed retreat. Basically a managed retreat orchestrated by the KGB and left a lot of people in positions of power. The Ukraine got away on them. They thought they could hold the Ukraine, but they didn't. The Ukraine is a definite thorn in the side of the rebuilding of the Russian Empire. Putin does not want to give the Ukraine up. We should be supporting the Ukraine every step of the way to try and help them break away from their Russian embrace. Because if they can do that, that really fouls up the Russians. And we've got one more free country in the world. So, yeah, look, it's not a totally black and white issue. There's all sorts of factions involved there. But basically, I support Ukrainian independence from the Russians. And I think we should do everything we can to help them.
No, I'm from the Netherlands, and I've been 5 years under the guy Hitler.
Oh, yeah.
Als een jong teenager, I'm 83, I'm a construction man. But this Crimea is already lost, okay?
Well, maybe, but see, even the Russians, even the ethnic Russians in the Crimea don't want to go back to Russia because Russia has military conscription, and they don't want their young boys fighting in being conscripted in one of the most brutal armies in the world. So I don't think it's quite settled yet, you know.
Yeah, but he is not going to lose. He's never going to lose the Sebastopol Navy base.
Well, he certainly doesn't want to. He'll do everything he can to stop it.
All right, well, this is early, this Russian move, so we'll see how that plays out. Always try to end close to on time. We're going to have munchies here. There are two people in the audience that I don't think were acknowledged. I think it's really important that we do acknowledge them. Tom mentioned them to me, so Tom's going to introduce them to you right now.
First of all, let me say, we were just talking about the fact that wouldn't it be great if most Americans, especially most American school kids, knew as much about American history as the guy from New Zealand? Wouldn't that be nice? And so, just to also encourage you, he left us with a very encouraging message after a sort of a depressing start, but it is encouraging, and there's a lot of other reasons to be encouraged. And here's one. Come here. Yeah, listen, this young lady is the chairman of the Republican Party in Pueblo, Colorado. Now, an inspiration for all of us is that she was primarily involved with and really responsible for, along with a couple of other people, yes, Victor, absolutely with Victor, of the recall of...
And Dave.
And Dave, is Dave here? Yes, absolutely, still here. The recall of Miss Perron in Pueblo, and amazing feat. Nobody could believe that it could happen. The Republican Party told her she was crazy and to stop doing what she was doing, but she didn't. So, Becky Mizel, God bless you.
Chair on the board of directors of the Southern Colorado Tea Party, and our goal was to take over the precinct level and then take over the executive committee of Pueblo County Party, and here we are. Yeah. So thank you.
You've all heard, you all know the saying that people who've served in the military, and that is, you know, some gave, all gave some, and some gave all. There's somebody here today that was given all. Her son gave everything and died on our behalf, really, in the fight in Afghanistan. In a movie now that, I mean, he's done something that has been made into a movie. Of course, I don't know if any of you have seen it. If you haven't, please do see Lone Survivor or read the book, and you will know something more about the gentleman. Give me up here a second.
My son is Danny Dietz. He was with Marcus Luttrell, and along with that, Matthew Axelson and Michael Murphy. And unfortunately, my son didn't get to come home. But he left a legacy behind, and he left an amazing people here that have given so much to make sure his memory is not forgotten. And one of them is Tom. He has been with our family and supported Dan and I, and Tiffany and Eric, and now Don and I, as we learn to carry on in our new norm of life. So we have a new book out about our son called Danny, the Virtues Within, and this is a story of him before he became a Navy SEAL, our little boy. So if you get a chance to get that and read that and learn who he was before he became the hero he is today, and the legacy that he has left all of you as well as me. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the question?
When is your radio show on?
When is the radio show on? All right, listen to that if you can.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
With Randy Corporon.
On KLZ.
This is the podcast for Wake Up with Randy Corporon. Listen to Wake Up with Randy Corporon live weekdays 5 to 7 a.m. on KLZ AM 560 The Source or through our online stream at 560thesource.com. Share this podcast with your friends and be sure to like us at Facebook at Wake Up with Randy Corporon.
On KLZ AM 560 The Source.